Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vectra AI podcast. My name is Tiffany Nib. I'm a product marketing manager at Vectra AI. And today I'm joined by John Mancini, our principal product manager at Vectra AI as well. And today we are going to talk about the topic on how can the SOC calculate an organization's identity exposure risk. And today we're actually going to walk you through an identity exposure calculator that we built here at Vectra AI. And John, why don't you tell us why did we even build a calculator like that?
Yeah, I think the conversations that I had with customers is that they hear these stories of compromises of identities. They hear how important identities are in attacks, but they were really kind of trying to figure out how they talk about what the actual risk is in
Hmm.
hard, real numbers. And it's always tough. There's lots of ways to slice and dice numbers, but
Yeah,
anything that orients teams can really help drive them forward to kind of understand the scale of a problem.
yeah, that makes sense. So let me pull up the calculator and we can have a chat about the different stats that we've been seeing. So first of all, 90% of organization has experienced an identity breach, and this is an unfortunate statistics, but it's very high. But did you guys also know that actually 90% of these breach organizations actually have MFA in place? So I think this is interesting because John, you and I heard a lot of customers or even prospects that we talk to, and they think they have MFA in place and they're covered. What's your view on that?
MFA is like a very powerful deterrent from attackers. Conditional access policy is very powerful deterrent for attackers. But
Yeah,
ultimately, there are a lot of ways around it, from stolen tokens
right.
to endpoints that are compromised that have access to credentials. There's just a lot of ways to get through. So it is a constant thing where prevention is super useful, but it's not enough.
Yeah, makes sense. So here in the calculator, we start by asking you to fill in the number of employees your organization has. For example, here I put in 10,000 and then I can just click calculate my risk. And according to Vectra AI research, actually for each employee, you would have three times the number of identities, and they can be human identities or machine and service identities, which means that for if you have 10,000 employees, you would actually have 30,000 number of identities to protect. And so, John, based on what you just said about MFA, how much protection would MFA be able to give an organization on these 30,000 identities?
So yeah, I mean it will help, but ultimately, you have things like service accounts where there is not a pathway to put MFA. You're running into challenges and passwords that can't be changed out because then you'd be interrupting the services. Some of the end users have legacy protocols enabled or kind of quasi-dormant service accounts in there. It's just, there's a lot of identities here that you can't protect
Yeah.
in that way that you think you are. And that's part of why we put this here, is to show, going from that 10 to 30. And this is, I would argue, an underestimate of really how
Yeah.
many identities, if you have a lot of machines out there that this expands to.
Right, right. And we are seeing every year the number of identities and organizations and the SOC or even the IAM team need to manage is just growing exponentially with the migration to the cloud, right? And all these different factors. So,
Yeah.
which means that here even if it is a conservative estimation, we know that not all of the MFA, or not everyone use MFA in an organizations. According to Okta, only 64% of the users use it. Plus, MFA can't even protect machine and service account, which means that based on our calculation, the attackers would at least have 10,000 ways to infiltrate your organizations if you have 10,000 employees. And the unfortunate fact is also that attackers only need one to be successful. And according to IBM, each of the data breach can cost up to 4 million. So it is a really huge figure and something that organizations need to consider. So based on that, John, what do you think is the recommendation that we can give for organizations when they want to step up their identity security game here?
So I think the way that I see this is there's a funnel here, right? The prevention helps bring, your number of accounts that are at risk down from, that 30,000 to a smaller number. but
Yeah.
that smaller number isn't zero. And for an
Yeah.
attacker, really, they just need a non-zero chance of success, and then they can be successful. And so how to
Mm,
bring that number from a defender's side to a zero for the attacker
yeah.
is through things that are threat detection based, is through alerting on this behavior before damage, having
Right.
coverage for whatever it is attackers do, so you can see it before you get to that end number there as what the impact is. And
Right.
this is what we see prevention fail, but detection doesn't. And that's how organizations can avoid that damage cost at the bottom.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's just important to detect it when the attack actually happened and the compromise happened. And in some other case, attackers might even be in an organization's environment already, right? I think we were in another customer conversation where they were telling us that the team has found an employee's credential in the dark web sold for $6 each, which is, yeah, it's just crazy. So that also brings us to our next recommendation, which is security testing. So why is security testing important, John?
Because it helps show kind of this impact. Because it's one thing to see, quantitatively like this, that there is this funnel aspect to prevention where it's bringing the numbers down, but not to zero. But then the next kind of immediate question is, well, how does that go, in that chunk here that we're saying that's not being prevented? What does that look like? And so
Yeah,
testing really helps to bring that aspect to life.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see exactly how an attacker would exploit an account for their own means in my environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if anyone wants to understand more about how resilient their environment is to such an attack, we do offer an identity exposure gap analysis, which you can access on our website. We'll put all the links in the description box below. But here is really our security team sitting down with you using an open source attack simulation tool to help you understand, are you able to detect what an attacker can do once they've gained valid credential to your environment. So yeah, do feel free to check it out. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this podcast episode. And if you haven't already, check out our other podcasts. Do feel free to subscribe to our channel and also uh, check out the other episodes. And with that, thanks again for joining me, John, and for another chat about identity security, and hope to see you in another episode. Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
all.